This is Professor Stefan Schmidt. Sorry, I'm still dressed in some clothes from a field trip that we did here, some research on wetlands. Hope you don't mind. Um, One of the things that is most crucial when we look at coastal zone management in the United States and really around the world, you'll see that in the international coastal zone experience as well, is that the number of people who are moving to and settling on the coast is much faster than other areas of countries. The coastal zones have a huge number of attractions, which I think we've read about, you've talked about. It is a desirable place. People love the ocean and love the beaches and the coastline. Secondly, it is, and so they move there to just live there. Secondly, it is a very dynamic and a highly productive area from an economic perspective. In the United States, for example, economic performance is much higher in coastal counties than in others. Tourism and the whole hospitality industry is an enormous source of jobs and a source of demand for products and services and a supply chain to feed both the on the coast kind of attractions that exist, hotels and beaches and so on, but also more and more in selected venues, the cruise ship industry, which is a kind of both coastal and oceanic entertainment and tourism industry, is also bringing a lot of activity to the actual coastal areas. People generally fly in a day or two before they leave on a cruise. They stay at a hotel. They go out to local attractions. They go to restaurants. They sometimes rent cars. And that industry has developed a huge collateral activity on the coastal zone. And so one thing I urge you to study carefully and to continue to study is the human footprint that is increasing phenomenally along the coastal zones. The coastal areas are also, of course, extremely important, probably the single most important location for globalization. International commerce and trade takes place largely through the shipping industry. Products come and products go from ports and shipping facilities, and those have expanded greatly in the United States on both the east and west coast. In fact, even though the U.S. at times is in a kind of an economic, let's call it slowdown, the dynamic of the coastal port areas is almost unchanged and often growing at substantial rates. And so you have demand to further dredge deltas and harbors to produce better facilities for offloading and onloading for container ships and all the rest of the characteristics of a very high intensity international trade economy. And coastal areas also, of course, as you know, are very desirable venues for power plants, because you can dispose of, you can cool and dispose of those plants a little bit more effectively than you can inland. Very often you have rail lines that run along coastal shores because those are sometimes easier than to try to build those rail lines through cities and inland further. And I'm sure that if you've had a chance to perhaps look at some of the information that's available, this is Charleston, South Carolina, and on one side you can see the red markers, which is what the development human footprint was in 1994. And then if you look at the other side there, 2030, with only a 50% increase of the actual population, look at the human footprint and how it has changed and grown tremendously over that period of time. So as human beings move to the coasts, they have a multiplier effect. There tends to be a spreading out of human activity. And so it covers more and more of the coastal ecosystem of land, and therefore it produces what we call kind of coastal urbanization. And that is a term that's used more and more by coastal management experts. And it basically means that when people come and build suburban shopping centers and houses and condos and so on, often not right on the shore, but very close to it, you have to build bridges, you have to build roads, you have to build sewage systems and water supply systems and power lines and other infrastructure that then all has a tremendous impact on the traditional, relatively undeveloped coastal environment. And it has, of course, consequences that we also like to study. First of all, it produces a lot of human impact on the watersheds. The human beings, vehicles, roads, parking lots, and so on produce a tremendous amount of non-source pollution, all kinds of things. Imagine just people driving cars and trucks, the rubber that comes off of those. Where does that go? I mean, have you ever wondered that? You know, you're driving and after a while you got to get new tires because the rubber has worn off. Well, that rubber all ends up in tiny particles on roads, and when you get storms and rain, the runoff from that, of course, delivers that into whatever drainage system there is, and it usually ends up somewhere in rivers and in wetlands and marshes and directly into the ocean often. Every drop of oil that drips from an old car or truck is washed away, as well as plastics and other things. So the human habitation on the actual shore has this essentially reverberation because there's such a synergism between dry land and the wet ocean and coast. So when you look at the material that we've assigned that deals with planning for the future, the United States, beginning in 2009, developed a very interesting program to essentially try to improve the sort of overall total management and decision making of coastal policy in the United States. And that is something that is very, very interesting. And I think you'll find that, let me just look it up real quickly here. The Pew Center developed a wonderful report that you can read all of it if you want, or some of it is called Coastal Sprawl, the Effects of Urban Design on Aquatic Ecosystems. Those aquatic ecosystems are largely, or include enormously the coastal zones as well, of the Great Lakes as well as the oceans. This coastal sprawl represents the need to implement this 2009 kind of integrated development concept that the federal government has been working on. And it includes, as one feature that I think is very interesting, a great deal of stakeholder involvement. In other words, people who live on the coastal zone, who live on the shore and the ocean, ought to be involved in how counties and how special districts and how municipalities and how state governments, together with the federal government, together with the private sector and nonprofits, approach the whole issue of how to design coastal structures, how to design neighborhoods, how to design buildings, roads, and other developments, because it can be done in such a way that it minimizes and reduces the negative impact. Or it can be done in the traditional way, and then you have to scramble to retrofit and come back and essentially try to fix things, which is very expensive and politically very difficult. So I hope these things are all kind of percolating in your mind, and I hope that you're enjoying reading the material and looking at these kinds of problems. See you on the internet.